Good morning, Britain. The defiant city, breaking news in the last few hours. Ukraine rejects Russia's demand to surrender the city of Mariupol. What he's going to do. And people are desperate for him to help. Congratulations to the Eagles, who also threw.
Who would have been champion there? Who was...
Wonder how much... I mean, 5 pence isn't going to... It's useful, but it's not going to... It's not like slashing the cost of fuel. Really understand what is happening. Conservative MP, backbench MP, who says he is talking to parents who say the cost of petrol means I cannot afford anymore to do the school run. Getting to school. Do you think that the Chancellor and the Prime Minister, for instance, really understand what it's like for this policy? You have to go through with it. But I think a lot of people would say, not if it's going to hurt people. And a week universal credit uplift.
Which is really about
fuel costs, energy bills.
Yeah.
Good morning. Good morning, Martin.
It's just gone 6 o'clock. Welcome to the programme. Good morning, Susanna.
It's very good to have you back. And
that was a bit cheesy, wasn't it? It was a bit cheesy. It's only 6 o'clock and we've gone full cheese.
You haven't gone full tie, of course. The tie is off. Yesterday, I think lots of people were watching you on the programme, the Sunday morning programme with Sophie Rayworth, when you admitted that you are virtually the spring statement on the cards this week. The Chancellor will announce. A lot of people asking, Martin Lewis, why aren't you running? Lots of people would vote for you to be the Chancellor of the Exchequer. If you were, what would you do this week?
Resign.
What?
I'd resign. If you made me Chancellor, the first thing I'd do is resign. To talk about the impacts on real people on a number of occasions.
And you saw him yesterday,
I did see him yesterday. I often disagree. Where we are now, people will need help or they will have to choose between starving and freezing. When I would say, you're paying too much, you're on the price cap, you need to fix, and here's the savings. There are no fixes available on the open market that anyone should be going for. There are very more support for insulating people's homes better. All the unions can say, you need to bring prices down, especially for the poorest, and rising up to some in the middle who, while they may be able to afford the cost of living increase, that's the position we're in today, and it's very scary.
We're going to be speaking to a former Chancellor of the Exchequer, Sajid Javid, who's currently, of course, the Health Secretary. We'll talk to him at 8:30, and we'll also speak to Robert Halfon, who is the Conservative chair of the Education Select Committee, who is the one who says that parents are now in a situation where petrol is so expensive, they're in a virtual schools lockdown because they can't afford to take their kids on the school run.
And I would just like to ask, if you're watching now and you have a disability or a medical condition that means you need to use more electricity, would you get in touch and tell us what your bills are? Because we have a former Chancellor who's now Secretary of State for Health, and it's one of my big concerns that people with disabilities, the amount that they're having to pay for electricity. And I'd like to put your situation to the Chancellor, to the Secretary of State for Health. Please get in touch.
Get in touch with us this morning. You can tweet us or email us. First, though, let's turn our attention to Ukraine. The breaking news within the last few hours that the besieged city of Mariupol has refused to yield to Russian demands to surrender. Soldiers on the front line there were told they must lay down their weapons by 2 a.m. if they wanted to be spared.
The ultimatum came amid claims that captured civilians in Mariupol are being deported to forced labour camps in Russia. Liz Summers has this report. So I qualify to be Chancellor? Well, the honest answer is no one. Terrible things happening to people in Ukraine. We have to suck it up because of what's there.
7:41, The Clash have given their blessing to a new version of their song London Calling by a Ukrainian punk band called Beaten. It is now Kyiv Calling. It was recorded near the front line and it has lyrics which call upon the rest of the world to support the defence of the country from Russian invaders. Very first trip abroad to join the fight in Ukraine against the Russian invasion.
Alex, which is not his real name, has now returned to the UK after narrowly escaping a deadly attack at his base and says he wants to dissuade anyone else from thinking of following in his footsteps. We'll speak to him and his mum in a moment. First, here's Pip Thompson with his story.
Alex and his mum Lisa join us now. Alex, what did you think you were going to be able to do with no military training or experience?
I knew it was going to be a suicide mission. I think we all knew that at the end of the day going over there. But I wanted to just go and help the civilians. I wanted to go and get the ones from from the east, from the south, just into a safe place like Poland or a different country.
So you'd gone out there in order to help. Did you go out there in order to fight?
It wasn't really about fighting. It was more about, obviously, just putting a smile on someone's face when they're walking past that borderline, or putting a smile on someone's face that's walking miles and miles.
So you could have gone to Poland and helped, couldn't you, the refugee effort, but you went into Ukraine. What happened when you landed? What happened when you were taken to Yavoriv?
So basically, we got there on the day, and we signed the contract on that day. We got the gear.
Signed a contract to do what?
To become a soldier for the Ukrainian army. It wasn't about a foreign legion. It was all about you be a soldier for the Ukrainian army.
Just so looking at you now, and you'll forgive me saying this, you look 19. You look like you're just out of school. You're a young man. You've got no military experience whatsoever. What did you think you were doing in reality? I mean, have you ever been interested in joining the armed forces? Was this totally out of the blue, or was this a lifelong passion and you thought you'd do it this way?
I have been thinking about joining the army from a young age, and it just hit me that I needed to stand up and do something.
But the guidance said if you didn't have military experience, you shouldn't be applying, didn't it?
Yes.
And you still went ahead. You took that risk.
Yes. In my head, I knew what I was doing.
And Lisa, you knew nothing about this at the time?
Not until the night before, literally 11 o'clock at night when we're in bed ready to go sleep. But he had jokes about it early. We weren't sure whether to believe him.
Wow.
I can imagine that there's lots of mums with teenage boys, perhaps teenage girls as well, who have had exactly that conversation around the dinner table. What would it, they're calling for people to go over. What would happen if I went over? So I can totally imagine that kind of conversation. But what happened when you went into Alex's bedroom in the morning the next day?
He was gone. His bag was gone. He had a similar bag to the one that's on the floor here from when he was in our army cadets. Even probably warm, where, the fact that you go into Ukraine, it's a cold country. And he didn't really have any clothing that would have been suitable for
Well, he didn't have any training either. There's no training.
No training.
I mean, Alex, you were completely unprepared. I've already asked you what happened when you arrived at the military base, but did you get training there? Were you equipped? At what point were you given, for instance, a weapon, told how to use it? Who else was there at the camp? Were there people there with experience? At what point did you realise you'd made a catastrophic mistake?
So no training. There was the best training we got was how to put a tourniquet on someone that was unconscious if the legs or arms got took off. That was the best training we got.
Did you get armed?
No, we didn't get armed. We didn't get any ammunition, no weapons.
Any armour?
Nope.
Helmet?
No helmet, no armour vest, anything.
When did you realise? When did you think? I mean, it's interesting because you started off by saying this was a suicide mission.
It was.
So what made you change your mind? If you'd gone there prepared to lose your life, which is what you're saying, what made you change your mind and think it wasn't the thing to do?
Well, when we got there, we got told we'll get training. We had no survival training, and people were starting to get very ill off the food, because salmonella, all that, because it was raw food. So it just turned off into the 6th day, and I was just thinking, these aren't capable living conditions to live in. These aren't capable food supplies. There's no medication there for the people that are sick.
Before?
Yes. 6:03 in the morning, we heard the first one shoot straight past the accommodation we were in. It was a bright yellow accommodation with red underneath. So even if a fire did start, it'd be easy to see, and there was no camouflage around it or anything. As soon as we got into the forest, I started seeing and hearing explosions all around me. And it was worrying, because every time you'd hear a whistle go over your head, you jump onto the floor and you'd think it was your last. But when you hear the explosion, or you saw at that point where you get back up and you just keep running and you keep looking for a trench to just bunker down in.
Did you know the people who were killed in that attack?
I know a few people that were killed in this attack. I met in Poland, and obviously they passed away, and I saw some of their faces in body bags.
Lisa, I mean, when you listen to that, that could have been your son.
Yeah, yeah. As soon as I, because obviously I've been watching the news every day, and I knew where he'd crossed over from Poland was over to, even though I didn't know exactly where he was in Ukraine, I presumed that it would have been around that area. So when I heard that the missiles had hit, I felt sick. It's literally the first thing that I'd seen on my phone, on the news on my phone in the morning, and I felt sick, and I just went into panic mode, trying to text him through every kind of text message, you know, WhatsApp, not just normal text. And then I went, and so I'm going through all these questions. It's like your head's on a hamster wheel and you're constantly trying to find, as long as you know where he is, then I'd know that he was safe or not. But no, it wasn't until later on that evening that we finally got a message.
Thank heavens.
But the message wasn't from Jamie. It was from some other person's Facebook page, Facebook profile. And I know there's been a lot of scams going on recently, and I wasn't sure if that was true or not. So,
Alex, you regret going, and you now are saying to others, don't go,
Yes.
aren't you? What would you say directly to someone who is considering doing exactly what you did?
I'd tell them to look back on the family, look how it would affect the family, look how it would affect the people around them, because once you're out there, your last life, and you'll never be able to see them people again.
And just in a word, are you still watching this about the Ukraine?
No.
No.
I shut everything off about Ukraine around me.
Because?
Just so I don't feel that emotion again over there.
Thank you both. Thank you both for telling your story, difficult as it is, and for coming in. Still to come. In the last hour, the UK government's defence intelligence says the Russian forces advancing on Kyiv from the northeast have stalled.
Right, let's have a look at the front pages this morning. The Guardian has the story of the people of